Broncos country, what is poppin'? It is your boy Mark here with Marcky Sports, man, and we are going to talk about some undrafted free agents today, guys, because the Broncos have signed 15 of them. We've gone over the 15 that we've officially signed in a previous video, but very briefly. So we're going to talk about 5 guys that I think have a legitimate chance, probably the best chance to make the roster. We're not going to go about, the 5 guys that I think are necessarily the best, but the ones that I feel like truly have the best chance to make the roster. Will break down the player, why I feel like their chances are, and if we should be excited about any of these guys in particular outside of them. So if you're not already, guys, I'd appreciate it if you consider, subscribing to the channel. If you love Denver sports, if you love the NFL draft, if you love just have a good time, man, hit the subscribe button, like the video. Appreciate you guys very, very much in advance. So a couple of things, man, to me that were really surprising, first and foremost, that really stood out to me is no running back at all is brought in, has signed as an undrafted free agent. Now, they are going to have 2 running backs that they're bringing in for a rookie mini camp next week. One of them's named like Thies out of South Dakota State, I believe, and somebody else, a little bit more of a smaller, quicker back out of like, I don't know, North Carolina something. Nothing crazy. I'm not really going to speak too much about him until there's any kind, unless there's any kind of official news on, the player signing with the team, because right now they're just a workout. But I was very surprised by that. And what I was even more surprised is I had come up with a report that had talked about some Broncos players that they missed out on, that they wanted, that they didn't end up, they ended up signing elsewhere. And you would think, oh, there had to have been a running back in that group. Nope, not the case. According to Broncos Wire, John Heath over at Bronco Wire, the Broncos were wanting to, they made a really competitive offer to Florida State cornerback Fentrell Cypress. Actually, someone that I was consistently mock drafting like later in the rounds, if I remember. He's a pretty long, tall corner, but he went to the Washington Commanders. They also reported to make an offer to LSU cornerback Zy Alexander, but he ended up going to the Seahawks. And then they tried to sign BYU quarterback Jacob Robinson, but he went to the Niners. So I don't really care that they didn't choose to go to the Broncos. I'm just blown away by them, not reports coming out of them trying to, bring in a running back or a tight end. Rather, they ended up going with two corners. They wanted to sign them both. And that is, and I wouldn't say it's on top of, but we still ended up with 1, 2, and 3 corners that we actually signed. And we drafted Jahdae Barron. So, I get it. George Payton specifically, he has a affinity for corners. He always believes that, you should at least draft one every single draft. You should always be deep at that position. And really, like I said, given the modern day NFL, that makes sense. But we are super deep at corner now. Very, very deep, in my opinion. And a lot of these guys are going to have a hard time making the roster. And in addition to that, you are also interested in 2 other corners over a tight end and over a running back. So what does this tell me? Well, I think what it tells me, man, is that the Broncos coaching staff and front office is a lot higher about this running back room and this tight end room than I think the general public is, than the general fan base happens to be. That, or they have a plan of acquiring, whether it be via trade or they feel like it's going to be maybe via free agency, a running back or a tight end elsewhere. But it's pretty crazy. And I was definitely surprised by that. But let me actually go back here and we'll show this again. So, what really, another thing that really stood out to me here is lots of offensive linemen. There's 2, 3, 4 offensive linemen, a true nose tackle, a true defensive lineman. And then, like I said, it looks like 2 linebackers and, the 3 corners that we had talked about. They only had 3 offensive players. Joaquin Davis, the wide receiver out of North Carolina Central, Jerwan Newton, the wide receiver out of Toledo, and Courtney Jackson, the wide receiver out of Arkansas State. No tight ends, no running backs. And even now with the drafting of Pat Bryant, our wide receiver room is pretty deep, in my opinion. You got A.T. Perry. You can't forget about him. He's on the practice squad. He's somebody that's definitely going to get his opportunities, right? You got Sutton, you've got Vele, you've got Troy Franklin, and now you have Pat Bryant. It's quite a bit of dudes. I mean, I guess we can maybe add a little bit on the back end, but very, very interesting to say the least in terms of the way in which they wanted to go after the positional value. So is what it is. But let's talk about the 5 guys that I think have a really good chance of making this team. We'll start with number 5, and that is going to be the one, the only. Oh, that's not number 5. Oh, look at that. You guys got a little sneak peek. Hold up. He's on there. So anyways, I guess we'll talk about number 3 then, because you know what? Screw it. I ain't going to edit the video and I ain't starting over. So this is how we roll around here. But Xavier Truss is somebody that I had at number 3. He's a very intriguing prospect out of Georgia, the tackle out of Georgia, because for him, I look at him like a lot of people think he's better off moving into being playing guard, which I can certainly understand. That's something that makes sense to me. But he's got the measurables and he's got the length to be a tackle, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting, man, because you don't really see a lot of 6'7". Is he 6'7"? Let me just make sure. 310 pounds, 6'7", 309-pound tackles. He's got 33-inch arms and 33 on the nose, which is that's like the threshold that everybody talks about. So for someone being that tall, his arms aren't like super long, but he's got big hands. Pretty decent athlete overall, and he has some experience playing at Georgia, right? So the interesting thing that I found with him was that he played, first of all, 6 years in college football, all 6 in the SEC at Georgia, one of the most respected programs. Played in 15 games in 2021 after playing 6 and just 3 in his first couple of years. 15 games again in 2022. He played in 14 games with 13 starts. So he really became a starter here in 2023. And the cool thing about it is he played 4 of the games at left guard. He had 8 starts at right tackle. He had 1 at right guard. So he played a lot of different positions. And then he started all 14 games last year at right tackle. So he's more of a true right tackle with a lot of versatility. Versatility as a lineman is something that is going to get you a really good chance of making the back end of a roster as a swing guy or someone that's more of a developmental piece. And because we do lack a little bit of depth on the offensive line, you're going to see a lot of offensive linemen on this particular list. So that's where we're going to go there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards, and we're going to start back at number 5 now, legitimately, when it comes to it. But keep an eye out on Xavier Truss. I think he's somebody that is going to be, I think coaches really want to get their hands on a player like him, somebody with this kind of size and length. And, who knows? Maybe good things will happen there. So that is going to be, that is my number 3 prospects. Sorry, we kind of just started randomly in the middle. So let's go ahead and get over to number 5. Number 5 is the defensive lineman that you had seen, we had talked about earlier, Christian Williams. Christian Williams is somebody that I kind of liked the things that I had read about him when I was doing some digging into the player. I thought he was pretty intriguing in a lot of different areas, and mainly because he's also extremely experienced when it comes to college football, specifically also again in the SEC with Missouri. He started off his career at Oregon, played 2 years there. He lettered, and then he ended up playing 3 at Missouri. So you're going to see a common trend with a lot of these undrafted free agents. This is really the last crop of the COVID bunch, but these guys have all played in college for a really long time. That usually causes players to drop. You would think it does the opposite, but a lot of the times there's a reason they're in college for such a long time. Doesn't always happen like that, but a lot of the times that's the reason. They're older prospects. They might not be the most talented. They're not going to take the world by storm, but they got a lot of experience and they played a lot. And that's something that you got to love. And he's played in 63 career games as a starter. And so when you look at it, when you break it down like that, 63 games. He's played in 63 games, in his entire college career. He started 39 games. And over that time, he had 13 tackles for loss. He had 3 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. And he also had 8 quarterback pressures. So by no means, guys, this is a very pedestrian type of numbers. Nothing overly special about it at all, to be honest with you, in my opinion. But, at 6'2", 295, and given that we could still use a little bit more depth with those defensive linemen, specifically at a 3 technique, like the defensive line, 3-4 defensive end. But because he's a little bit shorter at 6'2", you put on 10, 15 pounds, you get him to about 6'2", 310. Now he's the same size and height and weight as someone like DJ Jones. And he might be able to give you some nose tackle flexibility, which, if that's the case, you really love. So I put him on this list because I just feel like of all those guys, he's in the top 5. He's number 5 that I think have a chance to make the roster, but someone y'all should keep an eye out for once camp comes around. Number 4 is going to be, I don't know if it's Kareen Reed. I think it's Kareen Reed, the linebacker out of Utah. And again, the reason that I have him on this list, and I think he has a pretty decent chance of making this roster, is because he's a really athletic dude. Like he's got a safety hybrid mixed to him. He's got an 81.2 run defense grade. So he's good against the run, given that he's undersized. I don't have his exact measurables, but from what I can remember, and I can pull them up just to make sure, he's about 230 pounds, 6'2", 6'3", 230. So not overly big prospect. Let me pull him up really quickly here. Yeah. In fact, he's actually 6 foot, 231 pounds. He was recruited initially to play as a safety originally. And he earned his scholarship initially with Utah State. And then he ended up transferring over to Utah in 2022. And in 22 and in 23, he earned second team All Pac-12 both years. He started 23 games between those 2 seasons. And, he put up some pretty good numbers. In fact, we can actually share him here with you. And so you can see, like, in 2022, he started 14 games, had 72 tackles, 9 TFLs, 5 sacks, an interception, 3 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. And then in 23, and 11 games that he started, 67 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pick taken to the house for a touchdown, and 4 pass breakups. Here's the big key that you like to see. He's a 2-time team captain. And then this last year, his unfortunately, he suffered an injury in the middle of the season. He missed 4 games. So in the 8 games that he started, he saw a pretty decent number. So he's kind of intriguing because he's actually a very, in my opinion, he's a very productive linebacker. And I think he gives you some linebacker safety versatility. And as we know, I think the Broncos are pretty set when it comes to their depth at a lot of the positions, especially compared to where we were a couple of years ago. But linebacker is certainly one that we can still use some more depth, some more bodies, bring in some young guys to compete. You got Dre Greenlaw. We got really lucky with the injury not being as serious like it was originally reported with the quad. So I think he's going to be fine. But we don't know who's going to start next to Dre Greenlaw. I still think it's going to be Singleton. But you got Drew Sanders in that room. There is a chance that Singleton doesn't make this team for cap reasons. And then so after that, you're basically down to, Drew Sanders, Levelle Bailey. So definitely a room that we should add to. And, Kareen Reed is an intriguing player. I like the fact that he's a 2-time captain. I like the fact that he can contribute on special teams. We already know that's somebody that is going to, if you can be really good on special teams, you're going to have a really good chance to make the team. I didn't want to forget Justice Tornado. We do have him. Obviously, we know what he can do on special teams, and we know what he can do as a backup linebacker. So he adds good depth there as well. But you never know. The downfalls with Kareen Reed is he is very much undersized. Ain't no doubt about that. I mean, at 6 foot, 230 pounds, he is more closely built as a safety. But we know Vance Joseph likes to have that dime backer role. He started to use JL Skinner in that role a little bit later, and Devon Key in certain packages late in the season last year. And so maybe they can find a home with Kareen Reed, but definitely somebody that I think is intriguing. Happy to see him come in, compete for a roster spot in training camp. What we do know is that one of these guys is going to make the team. It's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. It happens every year, even in the years we were really deep, the Peyton Manning years, where our roster just seemed stacked. We were constantly having UDFAs make the roster. So Kareen Reed is definitely one that I'm intrigued by. Number 3, we already talked about, right? That was the guy that I screwed up and messed up with, was Xavier Truss. But just in case you wanted to keep everything in order, Xavier Truss is somebody. And the next 2, so my top 2 guys that I think have a really good chance of making this team are both going to be offensive linemen. And we're going to go with number 2 is Joe Michalski, the guard out of Oklahoma State. This dude is, when you start to look into him and you see all of, his background, how much he's played, what his teammates say about him, the kind of leader that he was, you hear a lot of positives across the board. And in addition to that, I think he's just a really solid overall player. Now, why wasn't he drafted? Well, I think that there's a lot of different reasons. One of them being that he's, a little bit of an older prospect. And number 2 is that he's not really very good at anything. He's kind of has a little bit more of a very low ceiling with a higher floor. Kind of similar to like Alec Polcheski coming out of Illinois just a few years ago. With him, I remember when we drafted him, I was like, I like this guy's chances are being a pretty solid player one day, because he was very experienced. He didn't have all these tools, but everything that you read about him was solid. His grades were solid. Everything was good. And he had a 92.9% pass block win rate. He can play all 3 interior spots, so he can play center, which he played a lot of, most of his time in Oklahoma State, but he could play both guard positions, which, as we know, we could use a lot more depth there, specifically at center. Bring him in, let him compete with, the Alex Forsythe, let him compete with Luke Wattenberg, and see if he can earn himself a roster spot if they like what they see there. But very good on the pass block win rate. He struggled a little bit more as a run blocker, but he's still pretty good. Definitely an undersized guy, right? I'm going to pull up his measurables for you. But while I do that, one very impressive thing is the fact that he's only allowed 1 career sack. 1 sack in a 5-year career. And guys, let me tell you, he played a lot of football, man. He played a lot of football. The dude was, like I said, 5-year player. And why is it hard for me to find things and pull them up now? I'm going to try to I'm going to get you guys a little bit more examples here. So just bear with me while I do that. But yeah, I mean, anytime a player plays in college for 5 years, has 30 plus starts under his belt for a pretty, well-respected program in Oklahoma State, and allows 1 sack, it's pretty damn good. Something that I would take. He is sub 300 pounds, if I recall. Now I literally cannot find his weight anywhere, but if I remember correctly, looking into him, here it is. Come on, man. I am just a mess today. My bad, guys. 6'5", 305. So he put some weight on for the combine, because I do recall looking at a lot of the numbers from different websites of him previously, and he was under 300. So he is a taller guy, but not very big. Not a very big dude at all. But yeah, played a lot of college football, and the fact that he gave up 1 sack is pretty damn impressive. Team leader, someone that was very well respected by his teammates. So you really like what you see when it comes to Joe Michalski out of Oklahoma State. All right, let's keep this rolling and get to the number 1 guy that I think has the best chance of making this roster. And I'll probably put his chances of making the roster, guys, to be honest with you, at like 70% or 60%. Like, I think he has a greater than a 50-50 shot of making the roster. I made an entire video about him. It was more of like just me messing around and giving him a hard time for a really funny but also terrible story that happened to him in college. So you can check that out. We're not going to get into all that stuff that ultimately caused him to go from Georgia to Jacksonville State. But that is the only Clay Webb. We're only going to focus on him as a player today. We're going to try to not make any power rate jokes. All right. But check it out. It's a pretty unique story if you don't know. But all of that aside, Clay Webb is actually a very good football player. Very, very good, especially in the run game. He's somebody that is impressive. He is strong. He's technically sound. He he really screams solid player, especially at center. I think Clay Webb is going to come in and legitimately be someone that pushes Luke Wattenberg for a starting position on the interior of that line, particularly because he is very, very good at run blocking. And that is where I think the emphasis for this offense is going to be next year. I think we're really going to emphasize being better at running the football. I think that in addition to that, Luke Wattenberg, I thought he played admirably. I mean, I think you can certainly upgrade there. But Luke Wattenberg is someone that is very good at pass pro, but he struggles quite a bit as a run blocker. So if Clay Webb can come in and show that he could be really good at both, he's going to perk up the ears of this coaching staff. And I really feel like, he can. He comes in at 6'3", 312 pounds. So he's very well sized, like good size for an interior lineman. Like I said, he had actually played technically 6 years of football. His freshman year in 2019 at Georgia, he redshirted. He played 2 games as a reserve, and yeah, so I mean, it didn't really play too much. And then 2020 in Georgia, he played in 3 games as a reserve. He was highly recruited. He was a 5-star recruit, and he was a 25th overall prospect coming out of high school. He was rated the top center of the entire high school class, coming out of Oxford High School in Alabama. So very highly touted player. Obviously was just waiting his turn to play at Georgia, while he was kind of getting his feet wet. And then in 2021, he has the off the field incident that caused him to not only not play in 2021, but it forced him to transfer over to Jacksonville State. And so when he did that in 22, he played in 10 games. He started 7 of them at left guard. And then he really took off in 2023. So I'll let you guys kind of read along with me on this. But in 2023, second team Associated Press All-American, second team All-Conference USA. He played in 12 games and had 11 starts there at left guard. And then in 2024, same thing, first team All-Conference USA. He started all 14 games. And he was pretty consistently talked about as being one of the most, one of the top 10 best FCS school prospects. Like I said, uber talented guy. Anytime you have somebody that was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, was a top 25 overall prospect, that's telling you really good things. Ends up getting, a full ride scholarship right off the bat to Georgia. He's obviously really highly touted. And the fact that he just had the off the field incident that I think he's moved past and he's matured from, if that's all that really caused him to go over to Jacksonville State and dominate there, and he really did dominate. He was a very impressive player overall there. You got to be intrigued by him. But like I said, the mix of the talent being there, the fact that he's plays, interior part of the offensive line, he could play center, he could play guard. He was really, really good at the Senior Bowl. All of those things mixed in with the fact that he's got a ton of experience, I think bode well for him. I think it really, really bodes well for Clay Webb to do some damage and really stand out once camp starts. So of all the 15 guys that we had signed, I truly believe that Clay Webb has the best chance of ultimately making this team. Can he improve as a pass blocker? Yes. He needs to get stronger. He needs to add weight. I don't necessarily know if he will get a lot of playing time this year, but there is the chance. There certainly is a shot because guys go in and watch some of the videos on him on YouTube, some of the highlights. The guy is a road grader. He really is a mauler in terms of what he can do in the run game. Actually kind of reminds me a lot of Quinn Miners in a lot of ways. But even though he never played center in high school, he did, he did so in the Senior Bowl. He played really well. He really stood out there. And by all accounts, by everything that I read, a lot of people are confident that center is something that he can make the transition to and do it really well. So those are the 5 guys that I'm putting, to watch out for in terms of the undrafted free agents that the Broncos had signed. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. I know this was a little bit of a rough video, but we're just going to go through it because that is life. But what I wanted to do is go back and start talking about a few of these other guys because I think it's important to really dive into all of these players, right? And someone that was really close to making my list, to be completely honest with you, was share this tab over here, was JB Brown, the linebacker out of Kansas as well. I put Kareem Reed over him because I thought he was a little bit more productive. I thought he played a little bit more. I just felt like overall, and then maybe the hybrid playing of being an off-ball linebacker mixed with the safety. You can kind of, if anybody that mixes that kind of versatility, it's a good thing. But I really honed in on those linebacker positions because I feel like that is an area of the roster currently that we could certainly upgrade. We could certainly use some depth, upgrade on the depth, I guess you can say, more than anything. And, guys that come in undrafted will have a really good chance to compete. Same thing with Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker, I didn't put him ultimately as a top 5 on my list because I don't think he has a really good chance of making the 53. But I think that they're definitely going to try to stash him on the practice squad. If this was like a top 5 players ranking, just like in general, Johnny Walker definitely would have made the list. Pretty intriguing pass rushing edge. Obviously played at Missouri in the SEC as well. So you got to like that. He's got some tools and some traits. And he also has just a really dope name. I mean, your name is Johnny Walker. It's pretty cool. So he's probably one of the better prospects that we had brought in as an undrafted free agent. We're just so incredibly deep at edge. It's going to be very difficult for him to make it. But someone to definitely keep an eye on. And I think he got one of the bigger bonuses when it came to like the signing bonus for an undrafted guy. I didn't really do too much work on any of the corners because I find it hard for them to make the team. But we do got Jaden Robinson out of Oregon State. We got Kendall Bowler out of Florida A&M. We got Joshua Pickett as someone that I think is intriguing coming out of Duke as well. And then yeah, I mean, these receivers are probably going to be pretty fun. We got Joaquin Davis out of North Carolina Central, who is pretty productive there. Bigger receiver, pretty fast. Definitely got some wheels on him. I think he's like 6'2", 195. And then you had Courtney Jackson out of Arkansas State, who's a little bit of a bigger guy as well. And then you have the kind of your smaller speed guy, slot type of, player in Jerwan Newton out of Toledo. And this dude can fly. He can straight up fly. I want to give an honorable mention in terms of chances to make this team to Christian Dowell, right? He's an incredibly raw prospect that played at a very small school in Tennessee Martin. But we don't have a lot of guys that are 330 plus. He is. And that in and of itself should make him an intriguing undrafted free agent for you guys to keep an eye out on. So let me know. I'm sure that there's some guys that I've been missing. I've been just uber busy in my personal life with my job as well. So I haven't been able to do, as much digging into the undrafted guys as I want to. But maybe I'll do individualized videos in the coming weeks and months to be able to knock out all these as I'm, still finishing up a lot of the draft pick videos that we have. So check those out if you guys haven't either. But anyways, let me know what you guys think, man. This is a pretty intriguing class overall, but I think the more intriguing part and what really took me by surprise more than any of the players that we're actually bringing in is the players that we didn't bring in, right? No tight ends and no running backs as undrafted free agents. I was actually shocked by that. I really felt like after the draft concluded that we were going to get at least 2 or 3 running backs and, a tight end or 2 at least, because those guys, not only could we use competition, we could use more bodies at those positions, but they also have incredible special teams versatility. And if you saw one of these guys and they have the, all the tools to be a special teams ace, that is something to be intrigued by and talk about. So let me know what y'all think, man. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourselves. Spend time with those people that you love the most. And then until the next video, go Broncos and peace out.